centre's 4 notified labor codes dilute the protection of labor. Collective action of the trade unions is the only guarantee to ensure their rights. Author, Nilotpal Basu. 4 labor codes have been notified by the Government of India immediately after NDA's major electoral victory in the Bihar Assembly elections and the accompanying euphoria. The codes on wages, industrial relations, occupational safety and social security override in the name of simplification of 29 labor laws. The truth is, the labor codes dilute and remove vestiges of labor protection which were enshrined in those laws. On the question of job security, all possible roles of the Labor Department will be dispensed with. 90% of the workforce who are engaged in the unorganized sector will be denied of all protections, as they do not have an appointing authority. The union government claims that the labor codes will ensure minimum wage for all. However, a number of states will be forced to reduce the existing minimum wages and millions of workers including scheme workers will be excluded from minimum wages, not to speak of fair or living wage. It is also claimed that the labor codes will usher in social security for gig and platform workers. However, there is no fund allocation nor any timeline. Without any mention of employer-employee relationship, what will Aadhaar do to ameliorate the situation for the workforce? Another claim is that fixed-term employment as per the labor codes will ensure equal benefits. The truth is that it will only introduce temporary status permanently in perennial and core jobs, replacing all permanent jobs with short-term contracts. This will also lead to loss of continuity of service, seniority, and actual benefits and the consequent weakening of unionization. The labor codes withdraw the government from a custodian and regulator of compliance, abolish the very system of complaint-based inspection and substitute it with self-certification, which is a euphemism for the freedom to violate all existing provisions which were instituted for the protection of employees. The labor codes are projected to improve protection of MSME, plantation, mine and construction workers. It could not be further from the truth. MSME workers are outside the purview of law, and there is no mechanism for transparency in cess collection. The dilution of inspections in hazardous accidents, like mining and plantation, can only result in more fatal accidents, and the responsibility of the employers will be exempt from criminal culpability. The union government in its press statements and social media engagements has been crying hoarse that they had held all possible consultations with the workers to replace the labor laws with the labor codes. The first National Commission on Labor in independent India, appointed in 1966, recommended for the holding of Indian Labour Conference, ILC, as an institutional arrangement for tripartite consultation between the government, employers and workers. However, in the last decade, no session of the ILC has been held. Therefore, the labour codes, when enacted by the Parliament without any meaningful discussion or debate, had virtually followed the course of unilateral diktat of the union government with the decriminalization of the offences of the employers and criminalization of the efforts by employees to assert collective rights and bargaining, and obviously, the right to protest. This is precisely a heyday for one-sidedly imposing the opinion of the employers on the employees. It is clear that the underlying direction of the labour codes is to facilitate, to repeat ad nauseum as a slogan, ease of doing business. Sadly, this has led to the presumptuous assessment that this will generate greater investments and consequently a higher rate of employment generation. This is completely divorced from the stark reality which is brought out by annual survey of industries reports over the years. These reveal that there is a continuous downturn in the share of wages in the net value addition, from 30.27% in 1981 to 82 to just 15.97% in 2023 to 24. During the same period, the employer's profits have increased from 23.39% to 51.01%. The impact of the same process is all the more pronounced on labor. The Labor Bureau data for manufacturing sector shows that the decadal average growth rate has declined from 6.7% in 2013 to 14 to 4.8% in 2023 to 24. The government admits that the number of unemployed educated youth is massive. The Economic Survey of 2024-25 shows that on an average 85 lakh jobs are to be generated annually for the next 10 years, with youth jobless rate in India being the highest in South Asia at 17.6%. Niti Aayog projects that artificial intelligence may affect 20 lakh tech jobs in India's IT sector. Labour Bureau data for the manufacturing sector show that the decadal growth rate of persons engaged, which was 7.14% between 2004-5 and 2013-14, has declined to 5.92% between 2014-15 and 2023-24. The figures clearly point to a sharply shrinking domestic demand. Removal of all restrictions on corporates and employers to exploit labor can only lead to greater inequality and unemployment, a recipe for complete destruction of domestic demand. How can such a precarious state of affairs induce investment? The labor codes are indeed a blueprint for the further enslavement of workers. Actually, they signal the complete undermining of the basic tenets of economic production which need to entities, labor and capital to operate. If the balance between the two is dispensed with, by the government stepping in to remove all regulations on the employers and labor is left to languish, the whole production system will snap and come to a standstill. If one thinks of technology as an important element in the process of production, its deployment today is one-sidedly with capital. On the one hand, it will increase productivity, but no commensurate protection for labor will invariably lead to greater exploitation. Every provision of the labor codes signal in that direction. They therefore constitute a class jihad against labor who are struggling to survive. The only way forward, therefore, is collective protest and struggle by the workers unitedly to take on this obnoxious reform, which is a euphemism for infinitely empowering and weaponizing the corporate employers. Fortunately, the growing unity of workers and the broadest sections of the peasantry also joining forces can strive to salvage the situation.